The agricultural revolution, also known as the Neolithic Revolution, represents one of the most significant transformations in human history. Approximately 10,000 years ago, humans began transitioning from a nomadic lifestyle based on hunting and gathering to a settled existence centered around agriculture. This profound shift allowed humans to cultivate plants, domesticate animals, and create permanent settlements. Prior to this revolution, humans lived in small, mobile groups that relied heavily on wild resources. Survival was uncertain, food availability fluctuated, and population growth was constrained by environmental limitations. The development of agriculture provided a more reliable food source, enabling larger populations, longer lifespans, and the formation of increasingly complex societies. The earliest evidence of agriculture appears in the Fertile Crescent, a region that includes modern-day Iraq, Syria, Israel, and Jordan. In this area, people began cultivating cereals such as wheat and barley, and domesticated animals including goats, sheep, and cattle. However, agriculture also developed independently in other regions around the world. In East Asia, humans domesticated rice and millet, while in the Americas, maize, beans, and squash were selectively bred and cultivated. These early agricultural practices were not immediate or uniform. They evolved gradually over centuries. Humans experimented with planting seeds, irrigating fields, and selecting species with desirable traits, eventually creating crops that were far more productive than their wild counterparts. Similarly, animal domestication allowed humans to control breeding, improve yields, and utilize animals for labor, milk, and hides. Technological innovations accompanied these developments. Simple tools such as stone sickles and grinding stones evolved into plows and irrigation systems, facilitating more efficient farming and higher crop yields. Storage facilities like granaries allowed communities to preserve surplus food, mitigating the risk of famine and enabling trade with neighboring settlements. These technological advances were intertwined with social and cultural transformations. Settled life promoted the construction of permanent dwellings, the organization of labor for farming and irrigation, and the emergence of social hierarchies. Trade networks expanded, connecting distant communities through the exchange of surplus food, livestock, and crafted goods. Religious and ritual practices often reflected agricultural cycles, highlighting the spiritual significance of successful harvests and domesticated animals. The agricultural revolution also had profound environmental impacts. Deforestation, soil erosion, and changes in local ecosystems resulted from clearing land for cultivation and pastures. Despite these challenges, the benefits of agriculture were undeniable, leading to population growth and the establishment of increasingly complex societies. Early farming communities developed governance structures to manage resources, resolve conflicts, and coordinate large-scale agricultural projects. Over time, these communities evolved into proto-cities, laying the foundations for the first civilizations. In addition to technological and social changes, the agricultural revolution influenced diet and nutrition. Cultivated grains provided a stable food source, though reliance on a limited number of crops sometimes led to nutritional deficiencies. Animal domestication supplemented diets with protein and fat, contributing to overall health improvements. Agriculture also allowed humans to invest in education, art, and specialized crafts. As not everyone was required to produce food, the surplus enabled certain individuals to focus on knowledge, creativity, and innovation, setting the stage for scientific and cultural advancements. The agricultural revolution was not a singular event but a gradual process that unfolded differently across regions. It catalyzed the transition from small, egalitarian groups to hierarchical societies, ultimately reshaping human civilization. Understanding this pivotal period helps explain the trajectory of human development, from scattered bands of foragers to complex societies capable of writing, trade, and technological achievement. In subsequent episodes, we will explore how agriculture spread to Europe, Asia, and the Americas, examining regional variations in crops, tools, and social organization. We will also analyze the long-term consequences of settled farming, including urbanization, social stratification, and the emergence of governance and trade systems. The agricultural revolution, therefore, represents a cornerstone in the story of humanity, highlighting the enduring impact of innovation, adaptation, and the human capacity to shape the environment to meet survival needs. This series aims to provide a comprehensive and accurate account of the Neolithic transition, exploring both the successes and challenges faced by early agricultural societies, and demonstrating how these early developments set the stage for the rise of civilizations across the globe. Following the initial development of agriculture in the Fertile Crescent and other early centers, the practices of farming and domestication began to spread across the globe, influencing new regions and cultures. The diffusion of agricultural knowledge was not immediate. It often took centuries for crops, techniques, and animals to move from one community to another. In Europe, agriculture gradually replaced hunting and gathering as societies adapted to new environmental conditions. Early European farmers cultivated wheat, barley, and legumes, while domesticating cattle, pigs, and sheep. The knowledge of irrigation and seasonal planting allowed communities to stabilize food production, supporting larger populations and more permanent settlements. In East Asia, agriculture advanced independently, with rice becoming a staple crop in river valleys. Particularly in China, millet and soybeans were also cultivated, providing a diverse and nutritious diet. Domesticated animals, including pigs, water buffalo, and chickens, complemented human diets and labor needs. The development of sophisticated farming techniques, such as terrace cultivation and floodplain irrigation, allowed societies to maximize yields and sustain growing populations. These innovations often coincided with the rise of village life, where cooperative labor and resource management became essential for survival. In addition to technological improvements, social organization evolved alongside agriculture. Settled communities required governance structures to coordinate irrigation, resolve disputes, and organize collective labor for planting and harvesting. This led to early forms of leadership, including councils and village chiefs, and laid the foundation for later political institutions. Trade networks began to expand as well, linking distant communities through the exchange of surplus crops, livestock, and crafted goods. These networks facilitated cultural diffusion, introducing new technologies, religious ideas, and artistic styles across regions. In the Americas, agriculture developed independently in multiple centers, including Mesoamerica and the Andean highlands. Maize, beans, and squash formed the basis of Mesoamerican diets, while potatoes, quinoa, and llamas were domesticated in the Andes. These crops and animals were adapted to diverse environments, from high-altitude plains to tropical lowlands, demonstrating the ingenuity of early farmers. Farming practices often required experimentation and adaptation. Selective breeding, crop rotation, and soil management were critical for maintaining productivity over generations. Similarly, animal husbandry required careful attention to breeding cycles, diet, and shelter to ensure healthy and productive herds. The combination of agriculture and domestication allowed human societies to accumulate surplus food, which in turn supported population growth and social stratification. Specialized labor emerged as not everyone needed to be involved in food production. Artisans, toolmakers, and religious leaders became integral parts of these communities, contributing to cultural complexity and technological innovation. The spread of agriculture also had significant environmental consequences. Clearing land for cultivation and pastures altered local ecosystems, while irrigation and deforestation transformed landscapes. These changes sometimes led to soil depletion, erosion, and shifts in water availability, challenging communities to develop sustainable practices. Nevertheless, the benefits of stable food production outweighed the environmental costs, enabling the growth of villages, towns, and eventually cities. Religion and ritual often reflected agricultural life, with deities and ceremonies tied to planting, harvesting, and seasonal cycles. These spiritual practices reinforced social cohesion and provided a sense of order and purpose within communities. Over time, the accumulation of surplus food, knowledge, and resources set the stage for the rise of early civilizations. The transition from small farming villages to complex societies marked a new chapter in human history. As populations increased, specialized labor, trade, and governance became increasingly sophisticated, laying the groundwork for writing systems, monumental architecture, and organized economies. The agricultural revolution also influenced patterns of human settlement, with permanent villages evolving into urban centers. Fertile river valleys, such as those along the Nile, Tigris-Euphrates, and Yellow rivers, became hubs of population, trade, and cultural exchange. These regions provided reliable water sources, fertile soil, and abundant food, supporting dense populations and complex societies. In the following episodes, we will examine specific case studies of agricultural expansion, including the development of early civilizations in Mesopotamia, Egypt, China, and the Americas. We will explore how agriculture shaped social hierarchies, labor divisions, religious practices, and political institutions, illustrating the profound and enduring impact of the Neolithic Revolution on the course of human history. As agriculture became more widespread, human societies underwent profound transformations that extended beyond food production. Settled life created opportunities for specialization, innovation, and social organization on an unprecedented scale. Villages expanded into towns, and towns into early urban centers, as reliable food surpluses supported larger populations. With surplus food, not everyone was required to participate in farming. This allowed some individuals to focus on crafts, trade, administration, and religious leadership, fostering technological and cultural advancements. Pottery, weaving, metallurgy, and toolmaking became increasingly sophisticated, reflecting the demands of settled life. Trade networks emerged to exchange goods, knowledge, and resources, connecting distant communities and spreading agricultural techniques and domesticated species. In Mesopotamia, one of the earliest and most influential centers of civilization, the abundance of grain from fertile river valleys enabled complex societies to develop. Large-scale irrigation projects, coordinated by emerging governing structures, allowed farmers to cultivate fields consistently and manage water resources effectively. This required collective labor, planning, and leadership, leading to the formation of early bureaucracies and administrative systems. Temples, granaries, and public spaces became central to these early communities, reflecting both spiritual and practical aspects of daily life. Religious beliefs often centered around fertility, agricultural cycles, and the control of natural forces. underscoring the intimate connection between human survival and environmental management. In Egypt, agriculture flourished along the Nile River, where annual flooding enriched the soil with nutrient-rich silt. Predictable flooding allowed for regular planting and harvesting, leading to stable food supplies and dense populations. Egyptian society developed highly organized agricultural systems, including irrigation canals and storage facilities, ensuring consistent crop yields. The surplus food supported monumental architecture, such as the construction of pyramids and temples, as well as a complex social hierarchy, including pharaohs, priests, artisans, and farmers. Writing systems, like hieroglyphics, emerged to record agricultural transactions, administrative matters, and religious texts, highlighting the centrality of farming to societal organization. In East Asia, the cultivation of rice in river valleys and wetlands drove the growth of densely populated communities. Advanced techniques, including paddy fields and irrigation channels, optimized water management and crop yields. The domestication of pigs, water buffalo, and chickens complemented plant-based diets, supporting population growth and specialized labor. Chinese societies also developed early forms of governance, with local leaders managing agricultural production and resource allocation. Similarly, millet and wheat cultivation in northern China provided a foundation for permanent settlements, enabling the rise of proto-states and complex social structures. The Americas demonstrated remarkable diversity in agricultural innovation. In Mesoamerica, maize became the cornerstone of civilization, supplemented by beans, squash, and chili peppers. The domestication of llamas and turkeys provided labor, transport, and nutrition, supporting highland and lowland settlements alike. In the Andean region, advanced techniques such as terrace farming allowed cultivation in mountainous terrain, maximizing arable land and water efficiency. These agricultural practices were tightly integrated with cultural, religious, and social systems, demonstrating that food production was both an economic and symbolic cornerstone of life. Agriculture's expansion also had significant implications for human health, diet, and demographics. Reliable food sources supported population growth, longer lifespans, and larger communities. But the reliance on a limited number of staple crops sometimes resulted in nutritional deficiencies and vulnerability to crop failure. Disease patterns also changed, as settled life and increased population density facilitated the spread of infectious diseases among humans and domesticated animals. Despite these challenges, the advantages of stable food production outweighed the risks, driving further adoption of farming across continents. Technological innovations continue to evolve alongside agriculture. Tools such as plows, sickles, and grinding stones became more sophisticated, and techniques like crop rotation, irrigation, and selective breeding improved productivity. Metallurgy, first emerging in the late Neolithic, allowed for stronger, more durable tools and implements. Social innovations, including governance, trade, and religious organization, developed in tandem with these technologies, creating complex societies capable of sustaining large populations and monumental projects. The agricultural revolution thus represents a profound and multidimensional transformation. It altered not only the way humans obtained food but also how they organized their communities, interacted with their environment, and developed knowledge, technology, and culture. The rise of permanent settlements and surplus production created the conditions necessary for early civilizations to flourish, ultimately shaping the trajectory of human history. In the next episode, we will examine the rise of social hierarchies and governance structures in agricultural societies, exploring how surplus food production influenced political organization, leadership, and the emergence of class systems. We will also consider how these changes set the stage for the development of writing, trade networks, and the early complex civilizations of Mesopotamia, Egypt, China, and the Americas. By understanding these processes, we gain insight into the ways agriculture fundamentally reshaped human society and laid the foundation for the modern world. The growth of permanent settlements and agricultural surplus during the Neolithic period paved the way for the emergence of social hierarchies and more complex governance structures. As communities expanded, the management of resources became increasingly important. Surplus food required storage, distribution, and protection, prompting the development of leadership roles and administrative systems. Village elders, councils, or chiefs often oversaw the allocation of land, organization of labor, and coordination of irrigation and farming projects. These early governance systems laid the groundwork for more formal political institutions, eventually leading to the rise of city-states and kingdoms. Authority was closely tied to the control of food production, as those who managed resources could influence the distribution of sustenance, labor, and trade opportunities. The emergence of social stratification was a direct consequence of agricultural development. Individuals who controlled surplus food or held administrative, religious, or military roles occupied higher positions within society. Farmers, while essential to food production, were often lower in the social hierarchy, while artisans, scribes, and religious leaders enjoyed greater prestige. This division of labor fostered economic specialization, allowing societies to advance in areas such as metallurgy, pottery, and textile production. The creation of specialized roles not only increased efficiency but also encouraged innovation, as individuals could devote themselves to mastering specific skills without the immediate concern of food scarcity. Religion and ritual played a central role in legitimizing emerging social hierarchies. Agricultural societies often developed beliefs centered around fertility, the cycles of planting and harvesting, and the forces of nature. Temples and sacred spaces became central to community life, and priests or religious leaders often wielded significant authority, both spiritual and administrative. Ceremonies marking seasonal changes, planting, and harvests reinforced social cohesion and collective responsibility, while also ensuring the continued productivity of agricultural endeavors. Symbolic artifacts, such as idols, carvings, and ritual objects, reflect the deep connection between spirituality and agriculture in early societies. Trade networks expanded significantly as agricultural communities sought to exchange surplus goods, resources, and knowledge. The movement of crops, livestock, and technologies facilitated cultural diffusion, spreading innovations in farming techniques, metallurgy, and pottery across regions. Long-distance trade connected distant communities, promoting the sharing of ideas, materials, and artistic styles. For instance, the exchange of obsidian, metals, and exotic goods indicates the development of extensive trade routes linking villages and emerging urban centers. Trade not only provided material benefits but also encouraged diplomatic relationships, alliances, and cultural interaction, further shaping the development of complex societies. The accumulation of surplus food also enabled demographic expansion. Larger populations could be supported, and settlement patterns shifted from small bands to substantial villages and towns. Population growth placed new demands on agriculture, prompting innovations such as crop rotation, irrigation improvements, and selective breeding. These strategies allowed communities to maintain food security despite environmental fluctuations, and increased human pressure on arable land. The interplay between agricultural productivity and population growth created a feedback loop, driving further technological and social advancement. Environmental management became a critical concern for early agricultural societies. Clearing forests for fields, managing water for irrigation, and controlling soil fertility required careful planning and coordination. Communities developed strategies to mitigate the negative effects of deforestation, soil depletion, and erosion. In some regions, terrace farming, irrigation channels, and crop rotation were used to maintain long-term productivity. The balance between human activity and environmental sustainability was crucial, as failure to manage resources effectively could result in food shortages, social unrest, or migration. As settlements grew, the need for defense and territorial control became apparent. Agricultural surplus was a valuable resource, making villages and towns potential targets for raids or invasions. Communities constructed defensive structures, including walls, ditches, and fortifications, to protect resources and maintain security. The organization of labor for both farming and defense further reinforced hierarchical structures and centralized authority. Military leaders and organized defense units emerged as part of the social and political landscape, reflecting the integration of agriculture, security, and governance in shaping early societies. Education and knowledge transfer became increasingly important as societies grew more complex. Skills related to farming, animal husbandry, toolmaking, and construction required instruction and mentorship. Knowledge of seasonal cycles, weather patterns, and ecological conditions was critical for sustaining agricultural productivity. Oral traditions, apprenticeships, and early forms of written communication facilitated the transmission of expertise across generations. This accumulation and dissemination of knowledge were essential for maintaining community stability and promoting innovation. In conclusion, the transition to agriculture had profound implications for social organization, governance, trade, population growth, and environmental management. The establishment of permanent settlements, the control of surplus food, and the emergence of specialized labor created the conditions necessary for the rise of early civilizations. Agricultural societies laid the foundation for complex social hierarchies, administrative systems, and cultural developments that continue to influence human history. In the next episode, we will examine the technological innovations that emerged alongside agriculture, including tools, irrigation systems, and methods of food storage, exploring how these advancements supported societal growth and transformed human interaction with the environment. The development of technology during the agricultural revolution significantly transformed human societies and enhanced the efficiency of food production. Early agricultural communities invented and refined tools to make planting, harvesting, and processing crops more manageable. Simple implements such as digging sticks and stone sickles evolved into more sophisticated plows, which allowed farmers to till larger areas of land with less effort. The domestication of draft animals, including oxen and water buffalo, revolutionized plowing and transportation, enabling communities to cultivate fields that were previously inaccessible. This increase in agricultural productivity contributed directly to population growth and the expansion of settlements. Irrigation was another key technological innovation that shaped early agricultural societies. By constructing canals, ditches, and reservoirs, communities could control water supply, reduce the impact of seasonal droughts, and increase crop yields. Irrigation systems were particularly crucial in regions with irregular rainfall, such as Mesopotamia and Egypt. The management of water resources required collaboration, planning, and centralized coordination, further reinforcing the emergence of hierarchical governance and administrative structures. Irrigation not only supported higher crop productivity but also allowed farmers to cultivate multiple harvests per year, leading to surplus production that fueled trade and social complexity. Food storage technologies were equally transformative. Granaries, pottery vessels, and later storage pits allowed communities to preserve surplus crops for periods of scarcity or seasonal variation. Proper storage reduced food loss, prevented spoilage, and provided a buffer against famine. This reliability in food supply enabled long-term planning and encouraged population growth, as communities could sustain larger numbers of people. Furthermore, surplus storage facilitated trade with neighboring regions, as excess food could be exchanged for tools, raw materials, or luxury items, promoting economic interconnectivity and cultural exchange. Selective breeding of crops and animals became a central aspect of agricultural innovation. Farmers recognized that certain traits, such as larger seeds, faster growth, or greater yield, could be enhanced through controlled cultivation. Similarly, animals were bred for strength, size, productivity, and temperament. These practices gradually led to the domestication of species that were more useful to humans, providing meat, milk, hides, labor, and transportation. The knowledge and techniques developed through selective breeding formed the foundation for modern agricultural science and animal husbandry. Metallurgy also emerged alongside agriculture, further advancing technological development. The ability to extract and work with metals, such as copper and later bronze, allowed communities to create stronger, more durable tools and weapons. Metal plows, axes, knives, and sickles improved agricultural efficiency and facilitated construction projects. Metallurgy required specialized knowledge, prompting the rise of skilled artisans and workshops, and contributing to economic specialization within societies. The intersection of agriculture and metallurgy demonstrates the interdependence of technological progress and societal complexity during the Neolithic period. Transport innovations accompanied these technological developments. The domestication of pack animals and the creation of wheeled vehicles enabled the movement of goods over longer distances. Communities could trade surplus food, livestock, and crafted items more efficiently, fostering regional economies and cultural connections. These transport advancements also supported migration and the spread of agricultural practices to new territories, expanding the influence of early farming communities across continents. Environmental management remained a critical aspect of agricultural life. Communities needed to maintain soil fertility, manage water resources, and prevent overexploitation of local ecosystems. Techniques such as crop rotation, fallow periods, and terrace farming were implemented to ensure sustainable production. The ability to adapt agricultural practices to diverse environmental conditions allowed societies to thrive in a range of climates and geographies, from river valleys to mountainous regions. These innovations highlight the dynamic relationship between humans and their environment, illustrating early examples of ecological knowledge and resource management. Cultural and social implications of technological innovation were profound. Communities that mastered advanced agricultural techniques could support larger populations, create surplus wealth, and develop social hierarchies. Specialized labor emerged, including artisans, traders, scribes, and religious leaders, each contributing to the complexity of society. Religion and ritual often reflected the reliance on technology and agriculture, with ceremonies and offerings intended to ensure successful harvests and favorable conditions. These intertwined technological, economic, and cultural developments laid the foundation for early civilizations, demonstrating the transformative impact of innovation on human life. In conclusion, the technological advancements of the agricultural revolution were instrumental in shaping human societies. Tools, irrigation, food storage, selective breeding, metallurgy, and transport enabled humans to produce more food, support larger populations, and develop increasingly complex social structures. These innovations not only facilitated survival but also encouraged cultural, economic, and political development, paving the way for the emergence of cities and early states. In the next episode, we will explore the environmental and ecological consequences of agricultural expansion, examining how early farmers adapted to and altered their surroundings while balancing the demands of growing populations and the need for sustainable resource management. As agricultural practices spread and populations grew, the relationship between humans and their environment became increasingly complex. Early farmers learned to manipulate landscapes to optimize crop production and animal husbandry, resulting in significant ecological changes. Deforestation, soil clearance, and the construction of irrigation systems altered local ecosystems, creating both opportunities and challenges for sustaining food production. The transformation of natural habitats required careful observation, experimentation, and adaptation, as communities sought to balance the demands of growing populations with the limitations of their environment. These early strategies laid the groundwork for more sophisticated ecological knowledge and resource management practices in later societies. The expansion of agriculture also had profound demographic consequences. Stable food supplies supported higher birth rates, reduced mortality, and facilitated population growth. Villages expanded into towns, and towns into proto-urban centers, creating dense settlements that required organized social, economic, and political systems. Larger populations also prompted the development of public infrastructure, including roads, storage facilities, and defensive structures. Communities coordinated labor to maintain agricultural production, manage water resources, and protect settlements from external threats. These developments reinforced social hierarchies, centralized authority, and governance structures, which became defining features of early civilizations. Agricultural expansion influenced the division of labor and social specialization. With fewer people needed for subsistence farming, individuals could focus on other tasks such as craftsmanship, trade, religious leadership, and administration. This diversification of labor promoted technological innovation and cultural development, as specialized knowledge and skills were cultivated over generations. Pottery, textiles, metalworking, and architectural techniques advanced in tandem with agricultural productivity, demonstrating the interconnected nature of technological, economic, and social progress. Communities that effectively managed surplus food and specialized labor were better equipped to thrive, compete, and influence neighboring regions. Trade networks flourished alongside agricultural growth, linking distant communities through the exchange of crops, livestock, tools, and luxury goods. Long-distance trade enabled the dissemination of ideas, techniques, and cultural practices, further accelerating societal development. For example, the spread of bronze metallurgy, pottery styles, and crop varieties illustrates how interconnected early societies had become. Trade also contributed to social stratification, as control over valuable resources created wealth, power, and prestige for specific individuals and groups. Diplomatic relationships, alliances, and occasional conflict were often tied to the management and exchange of agricultural surplus. The ecological consequences of agriculture were increasingly apparent as communities expanded. Clearing land for cultivation and pastures altered local flora and fauna, while irrigation and water management transformed rivers, wetlands, and floodplains. These changes affected biodiversity, soil composition, and water availability, requiring farmers to adapt their practices to maintain productivity. Techniques such as crop rotation, terracing, and controlled irrigation were developed to mitigate environmental degradation. Early farmers' ability to manipulate and conserve resources demonstrates the sophisticated understanding of ecological principles that emerged alongside agriculture. Religious and cultural practices continued to intertwine with agricultural life. Rituals and ceremonies were often linked to planting, harvesting, and seasonal cycles, reflecting the dependence of human communities on environmental patterns. Agricultural deities and symbols emphasized fertility, growth, and sustenance, reinforcing social cohesion and legitimizing authority. Temples and sacred spaces became central hubs for both spiritual and administrative activities, highlighting the dual role of religion in early societies. Ceremonial practices also facilitated knowledge transfer, ensuring that agricultural techniques, seasonal observations, and resource management strategies were preserved across generations. The surplus food produced by agriculture enabled increased population density and urbanization. Villages evolved into towns, and towns into early city-states, where governance, commerce, and culture flourished. Larger populations required new administrative mechanisms, including record-keeping, taxation, and labor organization. The development of writing systems in regions such as Mesopotamia and Egypt was closely linked to agricultural administration, enabling societies to track production, trade, and distribution. Writing also allowed for the codification of laws, religious texts, and historical records, reinforcing social order and transmitting knowledge across time. Technological innovations continue to support agricultural expansion. Plows, irrigation systems, storage facilities, and selective breeding techniques improved efficiency and output, while metallurgy enabled the production of more durable tools and implements. Communities refined these technologies over generations, resulting in more reliable food production and the capacity to support growing populations. The combination of technology, surplus, and social organization created a feedback loop, where each advancement facilitated further innovation, population growth, and societal complexity. In conclusion, the agricultural revolution fundamentally transformed the relationship between humans and their environment. Stable food supplies, technological innovation, and ecological management enabled population growth, urbanization, and the emergence of complex societies. Surplus production supported specialized labor, trade networks, social hierarchies, and cultural development, while religious and ritual practices reinforced social cohesion and knowledge transfer. The changes initiated during this period set the foundation for early civilizations, illustrating the profound and enduring impact of agriculture on human history. In the next episode, we will explore the role of agricultural surplus in the development of early economic systems, including trade, taxation, and the emergence of marketplaces, and how these structures contributed to the rise of cities and organized states. With the accumulation of agricultural surplus, early societies began to develop economic systems that extended beyond mere subsistence. Surplus food allowed for the establishment of trade networks, both locally and over long distances, creating opportunities for economic specialization and wealth accumulation. Markets emerged as focal points where surplus crops, livestock, and crafted goods could be exchanged. These exchanges not only facilitated the distribution of resources but also promoted cultural and technological diffusion, as ideas, techniques, and innovations traveled along trade routes. Communities that controlled valuable resources gained economic and political power, reinforcing social hierarchies and establishing the foundations of early economic organization. The emergence of marketplaces and trade networks was closely linked to the development of social and political structures. Leaders and governing councils often regulated trade, collected taxes or tribute, and organized labor for large-scale projects. In Mesopotamia, for example, city-states like Uruk and Ur established administrative systems to manage agricultural surplus, coordinate irrigation projects, and oversee trade. Written records, such as cuneiform tablets, documented transactions, inventories, and legal agreements, demonstrating the early integration of economy and governance. Similarly, in Egypt, centralized control over grain storage, distribution, and taxation reinforced the authority of pharaohs and local officials. These systems illustrate how surplus food catalyzed both economic complexity and institutional development. Agricultural surplus also enabled specialization in non-farming professions. Artisans, metalworkers, potters, weavers, and builders emerged as communities could support individuals who did not directly participate in food production. This specialization fostered technological innovation, cultural expression, and artistic development. Metallurgy advanced with the production of copper and bronze tools, while pottery and textile production improved both daily life and trade potential. Specialized labor also allowed for the construction of monumental architecture, including temples, administrative buildings, and defensive structures, which symbolized societal organization and power. The accumulation and control of surplus food contributed to social stratification. Those who managed storage, distribution, and trade occupied higher social positions, while farmers and laborers often remained lower in the hierarchy. Religious leaders frequently wielded influence alongside political authorities, as agricultural success was closely tied to spiritual beliefs and ritual practices. Ceremonial events related to planting, harvesting, and fertility reinforced societal cohesion and the legitimacy of leadership. Social stratification, while creating inequality, also enabled complex organizational structures necessary for urban development, governance, and large-scale infrastructure projects. Trade networks also facilitated cultural and technological exchange. Crops, livestock, tools, and luxury goods traveled between communities, introducing new ideas and practices. For example, the spread of bronze technology, pottery styles, and agricultural techniques demonstrates how interconnected early societies became. Trade fostered diplomacy and alliances while also occasionally prompting conflict over resources. The integration of economic and political systems allowed communities to navigate these challenges, contributing to the stability and growth of early settlements. Population growth, supported by agricultural surplus, further reinforced economic and social complexity. As communities expanded, they required more sophisticated infrastructure, including roads, storage facilities, and marketplaces. The development of roads and transportation methods, such as carts and pack animals, facilitated trade and communication, enabling communities to coordinate over larger areas. Larger populations also prompted innovations in governance, including codified laws, taxation systems, and labor organization. These structures allowed societies to manage resources efficiently, maintain order, and support specialized professions. Environmental management remained a critical concern as agriculture expanded. Communities develop strategies to preserve soil fertility, manage water resources, and mitigate environmental degradation. Techniques such as crop rotation, terracing, irrigation maintenance, and controlled deforestation were implemented to ensure sustainable production. Early agricultural societies demonstrated remarkable adaptability, adjusting practices to suit diverse climates, landscapes, and population pressures. Their success depended on both technological skill and careful observation of ecological patterns, reflecting an early understanding of the interplay between human activity and environmental sustainability. Religion and ritual continued to intersect with economic and agricultural life. Ceremonies marking seasonal cycles, planting, and harvesting reinforced the connection between spiritual belief and practical subsistence. Temples and sacred spaces often served dual purposes as religious and administrative centers, integrating economic oversight with spiritual authority. Religious leaders played key roles in managing surplus, guiding labor organization, and ensuring the observance of rituals that supported both agricultural productivity and social cohesion. In summary, the control and utilization of agricultural surplus during the Neolithic period was central to the emergence of early economic systems. Social hierarchies, specialized labor, and urban development, trade networks, marketplaces, and administrative structures enabled communities to thrive, while population growth, technological innovation, and environmental management reinforced the interconnectedness of agriculture, economy, and society. In the next episode, we will examine the rise of early cities and urban centers, focusing on how agricultural surplus, trade, and governance converged to create the first true civilizations and the conditions necessary for writing, law, and monumental architecture. The rise of early cities and urban centers was a direct consequence of agricultural surplus and the complex social, economic, and technological systems that developed alongside it. As farming communities accumulated more food than necessary for immediate subsistence, they were able to support larger populations, including individuals who specialized in crafts, trade, administration, and religious leadership. This specialization enabled the creation of permanent settlements that gradually evolved into towns, and eventually cities, characterized by dense populations, organized governance, and social hierarchies. The first cities often emerged in fertile river valleys, where reliable water sources and productive land allowed for sustained agricultural output and population growth. Mesopotamia, situated between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, is widely regarded as the birthplace of some of the earliest urban centers. Cities such as Uruk, and Eridu developed complex social and political structures, supported by extensive agricultural production, irrigation systems, coordinated labor, and centralized administration allowed these cities to maintain food security and manage surplus distribution effectively. Temples and palaces became focal points for religious, economic, and political activities, illustrating the integration of governance and spiritual authority. The concentration of people and resources facilitated technological and cultural innovation, including advances in metallurgy, pottery, textiles, and writing. Similarly, in Egypt, urban centers developed along the Nile River, where the predictable annual flooding enriched soil and supported large-scale agriculture. Cities such as Memphis and Thebes became hubs of administration, trade, and religious practice. The centralized control of agricultural surplus allowed pharaohs and their officials to organize monumental construction projects, including pyramids, temples, and irrigation works. Social hierarchies were reinforced through the allocation of resources, labor organization, and the integration of religious authority into governance. The ability to manage surplus food and population density was a defining feature of these early urban centers, contributing to the durability and stability of early civilizations. In South Asia, the Indus Valley Civilization, centered around cities such as Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, demonstrates a sophisticated integration of agriculture, urban planning, and social organization. Advanced irrigation systems, standardized weights and measures, and meticulously planned street layouts reflect the high level of administrative control over both food production and urban life. Agricultural surplus supported a diverse population engaged in trade, crafts, and governance, allowing these cities to flourish for centuries. Similarly, in China, early urban centers emerged in river valleys, including along the Yellow and Yangtze rivers, where rice and millet cultivation provided reliable sustenance for large populations. These urban settlements became centers of technological innovation, religious practice, and social stratification. The concentration of population in urban centers facilitated the development of writing systems, which were initially closely tied to the management of agricultural surplus. In Mesopotamia, cuneiform writing emerged as a tool for recording inventories, trade transactions, and legal agreements. In Egypt, hieroglyphics served similar administrative functions, enabling accurate accounting of resources, labor, and taxation. Writing allowed societies to codify laws, preserve historical records, and communicate complex ideas across generations, reinforcing the structure and continuity of urban life. Literacy also supported specialized labor, such as scribes and administrators, who played critical roles in maintaining social and economic order. Trade and economic specialization were integral to the growth and sustainability of early cities. Surplus food allowed some individuals to focus on crafting tools, pottery, textiles, and other goods for local use and long-distance exchange. Trade networks connected urban centers with surrounding rural areas and distant regions, facilitating the movement of goods, ideas, and technologies. The exchange of crops, livestock, metals, and luxury items created wealth, promoted cultural diffusion, and reinforced social hierarchies. Cities became focal points for economic activity, political administration, and cultural development, illustrating the interdependence of agriculture, economy, and society. Environmental management remained critical in urbanized societies. Maintaining soil fertility, controlling water for irrigation, and managing waste were essential for sustaining large populations. Cities had to balance the benefits of concentration with the challenges of environmental strain. Techniques such as crop rotation, terracing, canal maintenance, and controlled deforestation were used to maximize agricultural productivity and mitigate ecological disruption. Urban planning often incorporated considerations for food storage, distribution, and transport, demonstrating the interplay between human ingenuity and environmental adaptation. Religion and ritual continued to reinforce social cohesion in urban centers. Temples and sacred sites served as both spiritual and administrative hubs, reflecting the intertwined roles of religious and political authority. Ceremonies aligned with agricultural cycles reinforced the importance of food production and environmental stewardship, while also legitimizing social hierarchies. Religious leaders often played crucial roles in managing surplus, organizing labor, and maintaining social order, illustrating the centrality of belief systems in early urban life. In conclusion, the emergence of early cities and urban centers was a direct outcome of agricultural surplus, technological innovation, and social organization. Urbanization allowed for population growth, specialized labor, trade networks, governance, and cultural development, creating the conditions necessary for the rise of early civilizations. The integration of economic, political, and religious systems exemplifies the complexity of Neolithic societies and their enduring influence on human history. In the next episode, we will explore the development of early political institutions, governance structures, and law codes, examining how agricultural surplus and urbanization facilitated centralized authority and the codification of societal rules. The development of political institutions and governance structures in early agricultural societies was a critical step in the evolution of complex civilizations. Agricultural surplus allowed for larger populations and permanent settlements, which required organized systems to manage resources, maintain order, and coordinate collective efforts. Leaders emerged to oversee the distribution of food, allocation of labor, and management of trade. These early political authorities were often closely linked to religious institutions, as spiritual leaders provided legitimacy to the exercise of power. In Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus Valley, and China, governance structures evolved to include centralized authority, bureaucracies, and codified rules, reflecting the integration of agriculture, economy, and politics. In Mesopotamia, city-states such as Uruk, and Lagash developed complex political systems to manage resources and coordinate labor for large-scale agricultural projects. Rulers, often considered divinely sanctioned, oversaw the construction and maintenance of irrigation systems, granaries, and public works. Administrative officials and scribes recorded transactions, monitored distribution of surplus, and enforced laws. Legal codes, such as the famous Code of Hammurabi, established rules governing property, trade, labor, and family relations, illustrating the connection between agricultural surplus and the codification of societal norms. These early laws reinforced social hierarchies, protected property rights, and ensured the stability of increasingly complex urban societies. In Egypt, the pharaoh functioned as both a political and religious authority, controlling agricultural production and surplus distribution along the Nile River. Centralized administration enabled the organization of large-scale construction projects, including pyramids, temples, and canals. Officials and scribes maintained detailed records of grain storage, taxation, and labor assignments. The intertwining of religious and political power reinforced the pharaoh's authority and legitimized social hierarchies. Rituals and festivals tied to the agricultural calendar strengthened communal cohesion and emphasized the critical role of food production in societal stability. In the Indus Valley civilization, urban centers such as Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro demonstrated remarkable administrative organization, while the specifics of political structures remain partially unknown due to the undeciphered script. Evidence of standardized weights, measures, and city planning suggests centralized control and resource management. Organized layouts, including streets, drainage systems, and public spaces, indicate coordinated labor and oversight. Agricultural surplus supported both the population and specialized labor, facilitating economic complexity and urban sustainability. These cities exemplify how early civilizations combined agriculture, governance, and urban planning to create stable, organized communities. In China, early river valley societies developed governance structures that coordinated agricultural production, water management, and resource distribution. Local rulers and officials oversaw irrigation systems, flood control, and labor organization. Agricultural surplus allowed for population growth, the development of specialized labor, and the creation of urban centers. Ancestor worship and religious ceremonies reinforced the authority of ruling elites, integrating political power with spiritual legitimacy. These early governance structures laid the foundation for the dynastic systems that would dominate Chinese history for millennia. The codification of laws and administrative practices was closely linked to agricultural surplus and urbanization. Surplus food enabled the development of specialized bureaucrats and scribes who could maintain records, monitor compliance, and manage taxation. Written systems such as cuneiform in Mesopotamia, hieroglyphics in Egypt, and early Chinese characters facilitated accurate record keeping and communication across large populations. These systems allowed for the consistent enforcement of rules, the coordination of labor, and the management of trade networks. Legal codes formalized expectations for property rights, labor obligations, trade, and family life, ensuring social order and stability within growing urban centers. Agricultural surplus also influenced military organization and territorial control. As communities accumulated valuable resources, they became targets for raids, and conquest leaders organized militias and fortified settlements to protect surplus food, infrastructure, and populations. Military capabilities reinforced political authority, enabling rulers to maintain control over larger territories and populations. The integration of agriculture, governance, and defense highlights the interconnected nature of early societal development. Trade and economic specialization complemented governance structures. Surplus food allowed individuals to engage in crafts, trade, and administrative work, supporting diverse economic activities within urban centers. Markets and trade routes connected cities with rural areas and distant regions, facilitating the exchange of goods, technology, and cultural practices. Control over trade networks and surplus resources further reinforced political authority and social hierarchies, establishing the foundation for complex economic systems in early civilizations. Environmental management remained critical to sustaining agricultural surplus and urban populations. Communities implemented irrigation systems, soil management techniques, and flood control measures to ensure consistent productivity. These efforts required coordinated labor and centralized oversight, illustrating the interplay between governance, technology, and ecology. Societies that successfully managed environmental challenges were better equipped to maintain stability, support population growth, and foster cultural and technological development. In conclusion, the rise of political institutions and governance structures in early agricultural societies was intimately tied to agricultural surplus, population growth, and urbanization. Centralized authority, bureaucratic systems, codified laws, and coordinated labor allowed communities to manage resources, maintain social order, and protect their populations. These developments facilitated technological innovation, trade, cultural exchange, and the emergence of complex civilizations. In the next episode, we will examine the development of writing systems in greater detail, exploring how record-keeping, communication, and administration were intertwined with agriculture, governance, and economic complexity in early civilizations. Writing systems emerged as a pivotal innovation in early agricultural societies, fundamentally transforming governance, economy, and culture. As urban centers expanded and populations grew, the management of agricultural surplus, trade, and labor became increasingly complex. Oral communication alone was insufficient to record transactions, track resources, or maintain social order. The invention of writing provided a durable, reliable method to document economic activities, laws, religious practices, and historical events. writing became an essential tool for administration, enabling rulers, scribes, and officials to organize large-scale societies efficiently and systematically. In Mesopotamia, the earliest known writing system, cuneiform, was developed around 3200 BCE in the city of Uruk. Initially, cuneiform was used primarily for accounting and administrative purposes. Clay tablets recorded quantities of grain, livestock, and other goods, tracking surplus and ensuring equitable distribution. Scribes, highly trained individuals skilled in reading and writing, played crucial roles in managing city resources. Over time, cuneiform expanded to include legal codes, literature, religious texts, and scholarly works, demonstrating its versatility and centrality to Mesopotamian civilization. Writing facilitated not only economic and political management but also the preservation and transmission of cultural knowledge across generations. In Egypt, hieroglyphics served a similar administrative and ceremonial function. Early Egyptian writing was closely linked to agricultural management and religious practices. Records documented grain collection, storage, and redistribution, ensuring stability and supporting the pharaoh's authority. Hieroglyphs also adorned temples, tombs, and monuments, preserving religious narratives, historical events, and royal decrees. The integration of writing into both secular and sacred spheres illustrates how literacy reinforced governance, social hierarchy, and cultural continuity in early civilizations. The Indus Valley Civilization developed a unique script that remains undeciphered but appears to have been used for administrative and trade purposes. Standardized weights, measures, and seals suggest that writing facilitated the management of surplus goods and commercial transactions. Urban planning, including organized streets, drainage systems, and public spaces, indicates a high level of administrative coordination. Writing likely played a critical role in maintaining order, regulating trade, and supporting economic specialization within these early cities. Even though the exact nature of the script and its content remains a subject of scholarly research. In China, early written characters, such as those found on oracle bones, were used for divination, record-keeping, and communication with ancestors. These inscriptions documented agricultural practices, rituals, and administrative matters. Writing enabled early Chinese rulers to coordinate labor, manage resources, and codify social and religious norms. Literacy also facilitated the development of specialized administrative roles, ensuring the efficient operation of urban centers and agricultural management. The emergence of writing in China reflects the broader pattern of literacy arising in response to the needs of complex agricultural and urban societies. The invention of writing also had profound implications for legal systems and governance. Codified laws, such as the Code of Hammurabi in Mesopotamia, were made possible through written records. These laws regulated property rights, labor obligations, trade, family relations, and punishment for crimes, providing a standardized framework for justice and social order. Written law reinforced hierarchical structures, protected the authority of rulers, and allowed for consistent enforcement across expanding territories. Similarly, administrative records ensured transparency, accountability, and efficiency in the management of agricultural surplus and urban resources. Trade and economic management benefited significantly from the use of writing. Merchants and traders recorded transactions, inventories, and agreements, reducing disputes and enabling long-distance commerce. Standardized writing facilitated communication between cities and regions, allowing for the exchange of goods, technology, and cultural practices. Writing also enabled the accumulation and transmission of knowledge about agricultural techniques, irrigation systems, and resource management, ensuring that communities could maintain productivity and stability over time. Religious and cultural life was deeply intertwined with writing. Sacred texts, hymns, and ritual instructions were recorded to preserve traditions and guide ceremonial practices. Writing enabled societies to codify beliefs, establish ritual norms, and transmit spiritual knowledge across generations. In addition, literature, poetry, and historical chronicles provided insights into the values, experiences, and worldview of early agricultural societies, enriching cultural identity and continuity. Education and literacy became increasingly important as writing systems developed. Scribes and other literate individuals received specialized training, often from a young age, to master complex symbols and record-keeping techniques. Literacy enabled effective administration, governance, and trade, creating a distinct social class with specialized knowledge. The presence of written records enhanced communication, coordination, and planning, supporting the growth of urban centers and complex societies. In conclusion, the development of writing during the agricultural revolution was a transformative innovation that revolutionized governance, economic management, cultural preservation, and social organization. Writing allowed societies to document agricultural surplus, coordinate labor, manage trade, codify laws, and transmit knowledge across generations. It reinforced political authority, social hierarchies, and religious practices while enabling technological, cultural, and economic development. In the next episode, we will explore the rise of early science and mathematics, examining how agricultural needs, trade, and urbanization spurred the development of measurement systems, calendars, and computational methods that laid the foundation for human knowledge. The rise of early science and mathematics during the agricultural revolution was closely tied to the practical needs of agricultural societies. As communities grew, the management of land, resources, labor, and surplus required accurate measurement, planning, and prediction. Early humans developed systems to quantify land area, track crop yields, and manage irrigation. Mathematical concepts emerged to facilitate trade, taxation, and construction, while observations of celestial bodies allowed societies to develop calendars that regulated planting and harvesting cycles. These innovations laid the groundwork for scientific thinking, demonstrating that practical challenges often drive intellectual advancement. Measurement systems were among the earliest scientific tools developed by agricultural societies. Standard units of length, weight, and volume allowed communities to quantify land, track grain, and measure trade goods. In Mesopotamia, standardized measures facilitated the recording of crop yields, livestock, and commercial transactions. Clay tokens, later replaced by cuneiform numerals, provided a tangible method for counting and accounting. Similarly, in the Indus Valley, standardized weights and measures ensured consistency in trade and construction. The use of measurement systems allowed for more precise planning, resource allocation, and economic management, contributing to the stability and efficiency of early urban centers. Calendars and timekeeping were essential for regulating agricultural activity. Observation of the sun, moon, and stars enabled early societies to track seasonal changes, predict floods, and schedule planting and harvesting. In Egypt, the annual flooding of the Nile was closely monitored, and a solar calendar was developed to coordinate agricultural and religious activities. In Mesopotamia, lunar and solar cycles were used to determine the timing of planting, irrigation, and ceremonial events. Calendars provided a framework for social organization, trade scheduling, and communal rituals, illustrating the deep connection between astronomy and agriculture. Geometry and spatial reasoning emerged as practical tools for agriculture and construction. Early farmers needed to measure land accurately for field division, irrigation channels, and settlement planning. In Mesopotamia, geometric principles were applied to construct canals, levees, and city layouts. Similarly, the Indus Valley Civilization demonstrated advanced urban planning with grid-based streets, standardized building sizes, and precise drainage systems. The development of geometry reflects the practical need for spatial organization and engineering, highlighting the connection between mathematics and everyday life in early agricultural societies. The development of numeracy facilitated trade, taxation, and record-keeping. Numerical systems allowed communities to account for surplus food, calculate labor requirements, and manage economic transactions. In Mesopotamia, a BASE 60 numerical system enabled complex calculations for trade, astronomy, and architectural planning. Egyptian mathematics, including the use of fractions and unit measures, supported construction projects, land division, and resource allocation. Numeracy provided a foundation for economic management, governance, and technological innovation, illustrating the practical applications of mathematical knowledge in early civilizations. Agricultural societies also developed techniques for predicting and managing environmental challenges. Observations of weather patterns, river behavior, and soil conditions informed decisions about crop selection, planting times, and irrigation. Farmers experimented with soil management, crop rotation, and selective breeding to maintain productivity and mitigate risk. These early practices reflect empirical approaches to problem solving, combining observation, experimentation, and adaptation. Such methods laid the groundwork for more systematic approaches to agriculture, ecology, and environmental science in later periods. Technological innovation continued alongside scientific and mathematical development. Improved tools for plowing, harvesting, and irrigation enhanced agricultural efficiency. Metallurgy allowed for stronger implements, while pottery advancements improved storage and transport of surplus goods. Construction techniques enabled the building of granaries, canals, and urban infrastructure. The integration of technology, mathematics, and scientific observation created a feedback loop, where each advancement supported further innovation. Population growth, and societal complexity, trade and economic specialization were also enhanced by scientific and mathematical knowledge. Accurate measurement, accounting, and calendrical systems allowed merchants, traders, and administrators to manage resources, plan production, and coordinate exchange. Standardized weights and measures ensured fairness and reliability in commercial transactions, facilitating long-distance trade networks. Mathematical skills supported the calculation of labor, taxation, and construction needs, reinforcing the efficiency and stability of early urban societies. Education and knowledge transfer became increasingly important as societies developed scientific and mathematical expertise. Scribes, administrators, and skilled artisans trained new generations, preserving techniques and methods. Oral traditions complemented written records, ensuring that practical knowledge, such as agricultural methods, measurement, and trade practices, was effectively transmitted. The codification and dissemination of knowledge reinforced social hierarchies, supported governance, and encouraged cultural continuity. In conclusion, the emergence of early science and mathematics was closely linked to the practical demands of agricultural life. Measurement, numeracy, geometry, calendars, and environmental observation allowed communities to manage resources, plan labor, and coordinate agricultural activity efficiently. These innovations facilitated trade, governance, urban planning, and technological advancement, laying the foundation for systematic scientific inquiry. In the next episode, we will examine the development of metallurgy and its impact on agriculture, technology, and society, exploring how early human communities transformed raw materials into tools, implements, and weapons that supported the growth of civilizations. Metallurgy emerged as a transformative technology during the agricultural revolution, profoundly impacting agriculture, technology, and society. The discovery and manipulation of metals allowed early human communities to create stronger, more durable tools, implements, and weapons, enhancing efficiency in farming, construction, and defense. Copper was among the first metals to be extensively utilized, followed by bronze, a combination of copper and tin, which provided superior strength and versatility. The ability to work with metal marked a significant technological advancement, enabling communities to overcome limitations posed by stone or wood tools and to expand agricultural productivity and social complexity. Early metalworking began with the extraction of copper from ores through heating and hammering. Artisans developed techniques to mold, shape, and sharpen tools, such as plows, sickles, axes, and knives. These implements improved the speed and efficiency of planting, harvesting, and land management. Bronze tools further enhanced agricultural practices, allowing farmers to cultivate larger plots of land, clear dense vegetation, and construct more sophisticated irrigation systems. The combination of metal tools and organized labor facilitated the production of surplus food, which in turn supported population growth, urbanization, and specialized labor. Metallurgy also had a profound impact on construction and infrastructure. Stronger tools enabled communities to build granaries, storage facilities, canals, and defensive structures more efficiently and durably. In Mesopotamia, bronze and copper tools facilitated the construction of temples, city walls, and administrative buildings. Similarly, in Egypt, metal tools were essential for quarrying stone and constructing monumental structures, including pyramids and temples. The availability of metal implements reduced labor intensity, increased productivity, and supported the expansion of urban centers. The use of metals extended beyond agricultural and construction tools to include weapons, which played a crucial role in the protection and expansion of communities. Metal weapons, such as swords, spears, and arrowheads, provided a significant advantage over stone or wooden counterparts, allowing societies to defend agricultural surplus, assert political authority, and engage in territorial expansion. Military organization became increasingly sophisticated, reinforcing the power of rulers and the stability of early urban centers. The interplay between agriculture, metallurgy, and military capability underscores the interconnected nature of technological and societal development. Trade networks expanded in response to the demand for metal ores and finished implements. Communities exchanged copper, tin, and later bronze, facilitating long-distance commerce and cultural exchange. Metallurgy required specialized knowledge, giving rise to artisans who were highly skilled in smelting, casting, and shaping metals. These specialists contributed to economic diversification and social stratification, as their expertise was highly valued and often concentrated within urban centers. Trade also enabled the diffusion of metallurgical techniques across regions, accelerating technological advancement and societal development. Metallurgical innovation supported agricultural intensification and diversification. Metal plows allowed for the cultivation of previously uncultivable land, while bronze sickles and hoes enhanced harvesting efficiency. Irrigation and water management projects benefited from durable metal tools, facilitating precise construction and maintenance of canals, levees, and reservoirs. Surplus production increased, supporting specialized labor, trade, and urban growth. The synergy between metallurgy and agriculture demonstrates how technological progress drives social and economic transformation. Metallurgy also influenced cultural and artistic expression. Metal objects, including jewelry, ornaments, ceremonial tools, and ritual artifacts, reflected societal values, status, and religious beliefs. Artistic production provided avenues for cultural expression and reinforced social hierarchies, as elite classes often controlled access to precious metals and ornate items. The development of metalworking thus contributed not only to practical functions but also to cultural identity, prestige, and symbolic communication. Environmental considerations accompanied metallurgical and agricultural expansion. Mining for metal ores altered landscapes and required the management of resources, including fuel for smelting and water for processing. Communities needed to balance the benefits of metal tools with the ecological impact of extraction, demonstrating early awareness of resource management and sustainability. Metalworking techniques evolved to maximize efficiency, reduce waste, and ensure the availability of essential materials for future use. Education and knowledge transfer were crucial for sustaining metallurgical expertise. Apprenticeship systems and oral traditions enabled the transmission of techniques, ensuring the continuity of skilled craftsmanship across generations. Written records, where available, documented recipes for alloy production, smelting procedures, and tool design, reinforcing the integration of practical knowledge with administrative oversight. This codification of technical expertise contributed to societal resilience, innovation, and economic specialization. In conclusion, metallurgy was a cornerstone of technological, agricultural, and societal advancement during the agricultural revolution. The production and use of metal tools and weapons enhanced agricultural efficiency, facilitated construction, supported defense, and fostered economic and social specialization. Metallurgy enabled communities to expand agricultural output, maintain urban centers, and develop complex governance structures. Its impact extended to trade, culture, and artistic expression, illustrating the far-reaching consequences of technological innovation. In the next episode, we will explore the development of long-distance trade networks, examining how agricultural surplus, metallurgy, and specialized labor drove economic integration and cultural exchange across early civilizations. Long-distance trade networks emerged as a significant feature of early agricultural civilizations, driven by the need for resources, surplus management, and specialized goods. As communities produced more food than required for subsistence, they were able to engage in the exchange of surplus agricultural products, crafted tools, and luxury items over increasingly long distances. These networks connected urban centers, rural settlements, and regions with diverse resources, facilitating economic integration, cultural exchange, and technological diffusion. Trade became a critical mechanism for sustaining urban populations, acquiring scarce materials, and spreading innovations, contributing to the interconnectedness of early civilizations. In Mesopotamia, trade networks extended to Anatolia, the Levant, and the Persian Gulf, linking city-states to distant regions rich in metals, timber, and other essential resources. The import of tin from Anatolia and copper from regions in the Zagros Mountains enabled the production of bronze, enhancing agricultural and military tools. Surplus grain and crafted goods were exchanged for raw materials and luxury items, demonstrating the economic interdependence of urban centers and resource-rich regions. Trade facilitated the development of commercial infrastructure, including marketplaces, storage facilities, and transport systems, ensuring the efficient flow of goods and information. Similarly, in Egypt, trade along the Nile and with neighboring regions such as Nubia, the Sinai Peninsula, and the Levant allowed for the exchange of gold, copper, timber, and luxury items. Agricultural surplus enabled the population to engage in craft production, providing commodities for both local use and long-distance trade. The integration of trade into economic and political structures reinforced the authority of pharaohs and administrators, who regulated commerce, collected taxes, and ensured the equitable distribution of goods. Trade also promoted cultural exchange, as artistic styles, technologies, and religious practices spread along commercial routes. In the Indus Valley, cities such as Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro were linked to distant regions through extensive trade networks, exchanging agricultural products, beads, metals, and other specialized goods. Standardized weights, measures, and seals facilitated transactions, ensuring consistency and reliability. The urban centers served as hubs for both economic and cultural interaction, demonstrating the importance of trade in sustaining complex societies. Archaeological evidence indicates that these networks extended to Mesopotamia and possibly beyond, highlighting the early globalization of economic activity and cultural influence. China's early agricultural societies also engaged in long-distance trade, exchanging silk, jade, and agricultural products along river valleys and overland routes. Trade enabled the acquisition of metals, grains, and other essential materials, supporting population growth and urban development. Agricultural surplus provided the foundation for specialization, allowing artisans, traders, and administrators to focus on commerce, craft production, and governance. Trade networks contributed to technological dissemination, including metallurgical practices, irrigation techniques, and ceramic production, fostering innovation and cultural continuity across regions. The development of transportation systems was crucial for the success of long-distance trade. Early societies utilized rivers, canals, and primitive roads to move goods efficiently between settlements. Carts, pack animals, and boats facilitated the transport of heavy or bulky items, reducing labor intensity and increasing the reach of trade networks. Infrastructure, including storage facilities, warehouses, and marketplaces, supported the flow of goods and ensured the stability of economic exchanges. Effective transportation systems allowed urban centers to access diverse resources, supporting specialized labor and the maintenance of surplus agricultural production. Trade networks also influenced social organization and political authority. Control over trade routes and valuable commodities conferred wealth and power, reinforcing social hierarchies and central authority. Urban elites, including rulers, merchants, and religious leaders, often oversaw the regulation of commerce, taxation, and labor allocation. The concentration of economic resources facilitated investment in infrastructure, defense, and cultural projects, contributing to the stability and prosperity of early cities. Trade enabled societies to mitigate local resource scarcity, diversify their economies, and maintain resilience in the face of environmental challenges. Cultural exchange was a significant byproduct of long-distance trade. Ideas, technologies, artistic styles, and religious practices traveled alongside goods, enriching societies and promoting innovation. Metallurgical techniques, agricultural methods, pottery styles, and writing systems spread across regions, illustrating the dynamic interaction between commerce and cultural development. Trade facilitated diplomatic relationships, alliances, and occasionally conflicts, highlighting the complex interplay between economic, political, and social factors in early civilizations. Environmental and logistical challenges required careful planning and adaptation. Communities needed to manage the production, storage, and transport of surplus goods while ensuring the sustainability of natural resources. Irrigation, soil management, and strategic placement of urban centers were essential for supporting trade-dependent populations. Efficient organization, accurate record-keeping, and technological innovation allowed early civilizations to overcome these challenges, demonstrating the interdependence of agriculture, trade, and urban development. In conclusion, long-distance trade networks were instrumental in the growth and sustainability of early agricultural civilizations. Trade facilitated the movement of surplus food, raw materials, and specialized goods, supporting population growth, urbanization, and technological innovation. Economic integration reinforced social hierarchies, political authority, and cultural exchange, creating the foundations for increasingly interconnected societies. In the next episode, we will explore the role of religion and ritual in agricultural societies, examining how spiritual beliefs, ceremonial practices, and sacred institutions shape social cohesion, political authority, and cultural identity during the Neolithic and early urban periods. Religion and ritual played a central role in early agricultural societies, shaping social cohesion, political authority, and cultural identity. The dependence on successful crop production and environmental stability fostered a worldview in which divine forces were closely tied to natural cycles. Communities developed religious beliefs and ceremonial practices to ensure fertility, favorable weather, and bountiful harvests. Temples, shrines, and sacred spaces often served as both spiritual and administrative centers, integrating governance, economic management, and religious authority. Spiritual leadership was instrumental in legitimizing political power, organizing labor, and reinforcing social hierarchies. In Mesopotamia, agricultural deities were central to religious life. Gods such as Enlil, the god of wind and storms, and Ninhursag, the goddess of fertility, were believed to directly influence crop growth, rainfall, and soil fertility. Seasonal rituals and offerings were conducted to appease these deities, ensure productive harvests, and maintain the stability of agricultural systems. Temples served as both religious centers and economic hubs, controlling surplus food storage, redistribution, and trade. The integration of spiritual and practical concerns illustrates how religion was closely tied to the management of resources and social organization. In Egypt, the pharaoh was considered a divine figure responsible for maintaining Ma'at, the cosmic order, which included the regulation of the Nile's flooding and agricultural productivity. Religious rituals, festivals, and offerings were integral to agricultural cycles, emphasizing the connection between spiritual authority and material sustenance. Temples functioned as centers for ritual, administration, and surplus management, highlighting the role of religious institutions in reinforcing social hierarchies and political stability. Priesthoods often oversaw land management, labor organization, and resource distribution, demonstrating the practical applications of spiritual leadership in early urban societies. The Indus Valley Civilization integrated religious and civic life, although much about their beliefs remains uncertain due to the undeciphered script. Archaeological evidence, such as temple-like structures, figurines, and ritual objects, suggests that spiritual practices were closely tied to agricultural cycles, fertility, and urban organization. Religious leaders likely played a role in coordinating labor, managing surplus, and conducting ceremonies to reinforce social cohesion. Spiritual and civic authority were intertwined, reflecting a common pattern in early agricultural societies. In early Chinese societies, ancestor worship and rituals honoring deities linked to agriculture were central to cultural and political life. Ceremonial practices guided agricultural activity, ensured the prosperity of the community, and legitimized ruling elites. Observances of seasonal cycles, the lunar calendar, and celestial phenomena influenced both religious ceremonies and agricultural planning. Religious and ritual practices reinforced communal norms, facilitated coordination, and supported social hierarchies, demonstrating the integration of spirituality, governance, and subsistence activities. Rituals in agricultural societies were often aligned with seasonal cycles, planting, and harvest periods. Festivals celebrated sowing and harvesting, expressing gratitude to deities and reinforcing communal participation in agricultural work. These ceremonies not only served spiritual purposes but also strengthened social bonds, coordinated labor, and legitimized political and religious authority. Public participation in rituals ensured that the management of resources and agricultural production was a collective effort, embedding social cohesion into daily life. Religious institutions frequently controlled surplus food, acting as both spiritual and economic centers. Temples and shrines stored grain, redistributed resources during shortages, and supported artisans, priests, and administrators. This integration of economic, spiritual, and administrative functions illustrates the multifunctional role of religious institutions in sustaining early agricultural communities. Spiritual authority, combined with control over resources, allowed religious leaders to influence political decisions, social organization, and cultural practices. Religious symbolism was also expressed through art, architecture, and material culture. Sacred objects, figurines, and ceremonial implements reflected beliefs about fertility, prosperity, and divine favor. Monumental architecture, including temples and ziggurats, demonstrated the power and prestige of religious institutions while serving practical functions in administration and surplus management. Artistic expression reinforced religious teachings, social hierarchies, and cultural identity, highlighting the interplay between spirituality and material culture. Education and knowledge transfer were closely tied to religious institutions. Priests and scribes trained new generations in ritual practices, record-keeping, and agricultural management, ensuring the continuity of religious, economic, and administrative knowledge. Religious narratives codified moral, social, and practical guidance, shaping communal values and reinforcing societal norms. Literacy, numeracy, and ceremonial expertise were often concentrated within religious hierarchies, further linking spiritual authority with social and political control. In conclusion, religion and ritual were central to early agricultural societies, influencing social cohesion, political authority, economic management, and cultural identity. Ceremonial practices, sacred institutions, and spiritual leadership ensured the stability of agricultural production, coordinated labor, and reinforced hierarchical structures. The integration of religion with governance and surplus management demonstrates the multifaceted role of spirituality in shaping early urban civilizations. In the next episode, we will explore the rise of early writing and literature in greater depth, focusing on how textual records, storytelling, and literary traditions preserved knowledge, reinforced social norms, and contributed to cultural continuity. The development of writing and literature during the agricultural revolution was closely intertwined with the growth of urban centers, governance, and cultural complexity. Writing systems initially emerged to manage the practical demands of agricultural societies, including recording surplus, tracking labor, and facilitating trade. Over time, these systems evolved to preserve historical narratives, codify laws, transmit religious teachings, and express cultural values. Literature, in both oral and written forms, became a vehicle for education, storytelling, and the dissemination of societal norms, contributing to the continuity and cohesion of early civilizations. In Mesopotamia, cuneiform writing initially served administrative and economic functions. Clay tablets recorded grain inventories, labor allocation, and commercial transactions, ensuring the efficient management of urban resources. As writing developed, it expanded into literature, producing some of the earliest known literary works. The Epic of Gilgamesh, for example, preserved cultural myths, moral lessons, and reflections on human mortality, illustrating how literature could convey complex ideas and societal values. Scribes played a central role in this process, combining administrative duties with the recording and interpretation of literary and religious texts. In Egypt, hieroglyphics similarly evolved from practical record keeping to literary and religious expression. Written texts documented legal codes, historical events, and religious rituals, while literary works, including hymns, prayers, and instructional texts, communicated moral guidance, ethical principles, and cultural traditions. Tomb inscriptions and temple reliefs preserved narratives of kings, deities, and societal achievements, reinforcing social hierarchies and collective memory. Writing and literature served as tools for both governance and cultural preservation, ensuring that knowledge was transmitted across generations. The Indus Valley Civilization produced inscriptions, seals, and artifacts that suggest the use of writing for administrative, economic, and possibly literary purposes. Although the script remains undeciphered, standardized symbols and inscriptions indicate the recording of trade, resource management, and social organization. These records likely facilitated the regulation of urban centers, the coordination of labor, and the distribution of surplus, demonstrating the broader significance of writing beyond mere communication. Literary expression, even if largely undocumented, would have contributed to cultural identity and societal cohesion. In early Chinese societies, oracle bone inscriptions represent one of the earliest forms of written records. These texts documented divination practices, agricultural activities, and administrative decisions, linking spiritual, practical, and political concerns. The use of writing allowed for the codification of historical events, genealogies, and religious practices, forming the basis for literary and philosophical traditions. Knowledge of writing and literacy was concentrated among scribes, scholars, and religious officials, who maintained records, interpreted texts, and ensured the continuity of cultural and administrative systems. Writing facilitated the codification of laws and societal norms, providing a permanent reference for governance, trade, and dispute resolution. Legal codes, such as the Code of Hammurabi, outlined property rights, labor obligations, trade regulations, and penalties for criminal activity. Written laws reinforced social hierarchies, legitimized authority, and ensured the consistent enforcement of societal rules. Similarly, educational and literary texts provided moral instruction, cultural narratives, and practical guidance, embedding societal values within both administrative and cultural frameworks. Literature also served as a medium for preserving knowledge about agriculture, science, and technology. Texts documented crop cycles, irrigation techniques, measurement systems, and metallurgical methods, allowing communities to maintain productivity and adapt to environmental challenges. Written knowledge complemented oral traditions, ensuring that practical expertise was transmitted accurately and consistently. This interplay between literature, science, and administration highlights the multifunctional role of writing in early agricultural societies. Trade, communication, and cultural exchange were enhanced by writing and literary practices. Written records enabled merchants and administrators to track transactions, regulate commerce, and coordinate production across regions. Literacy facilitated the standardization of weights, measures, and trade agreements, ensuring reliability and fairness in economic activity. Furthermore, literary works, myths, and religious texts traveled along trade networks, promoting cultural diffusion, shared values, and technological dissemination across distant regions. Religious and ceremonial texts reinforced the authority of spiritual and political leaders. Written rituals, hymns, prayers, and mythologies codified beliefs, regulated ceremonial practices, and legitimized governance. Sacred texts guided communal behavior, agricultural activity, and social interaction, ensuring cohesion and stability within urban centers. Literature and religious documentation were closely intertwined, illustrating the integration of spiritual, administrative, and cultural functions in early civilizations. Education and the professionalization of scribes ensured the continuity of writing and literary traditions. Training programs, apprenticeships, and formal instruction allowed new generations to master complex writing systems, interpret texts, and manage administrative responsibilities. Scribes not only recorded economic and legal information but also preserved literary, religious, and historical knowledge, acting as custodians of culture and governance. Literacy reinforced social hierarchies, facilitated governance, and supported the development of cultural identity and intellectual continuity. In conclusion, the emergence of writing and literature during the agricultural revolution was a transformative development that shaped governance, economy, culture, and education. Writing enabled accurate record-keeping, trade regulation, and legal codification, while literature preserved historical narratives, religious beliefs, and societal values. These innovations reinforced social hierarchies, political authority, and cultural identity, ensuring the continuity and cohesion of early agricultural civilizations. In the next episode, we will examine the rise of early education systems and the professionalization of knowledge, exploring how the transmission of skills, literacy, and specialized expertise supported the complexity and sustainability of urban societies. Education and the professionalization of knowledge played a crucial role in sustaining early agricultural civilizations. As societies became more complex, the management of agricultural surplus, trade, urban planning, and governance required individuals with specialized skills. Education systems emerged to train scribes, artisans, administrators, and religious officials, ensuring the accurate transmission of technical, administrative, and cultural knowledge. The professionalization of expertise allowed societies to maintain continuity, enforce social norms, and foster innovation, supporting the growth and stability of urban centers. In Mesopotamia, scribal schools known as e-dubbas trained young men in cuneiform writing, accounting, mathematics, and administrative procedures. Education was rigorous and highly specialized, focusing on memorization, copying texts, and mastering numerical systems for economic management. Scribes were essential for the operation of temples, palaces, and commercial enterprises, maintaining records of grain, livestock, labor, and trade. Their expertise extended to legal matters, religious texts, and literary works, highlighting the multifunctional role of education in society. Literacy and numeracy were concentrated within this professional class, creating a hierarchy of knowledge and reinforcing social stratification. In Egypt, education was closely linked to religious institutions and the pharaoh's administration. Priests and scribes received extensive training in hieroglyphics, mathematics, astronomy, and ritual practices. These educated elites managed temple resources, oversaw land and labor allocation, and maintained administrative records. Education ensured that technical knowledge, religious traditions, and cultural practices were transmitted accurately across generations, supporting governance, agricultural management, and social cohesion. Written and oral instruction preserved the integration of spiritual, political, and practical expertise. The Indus Valley Civilization also demonstrates evidence of specialized knowledge and training, though specifics are less documented due to the undeciphered script. The standardized use of weights, measures, and urban planning indicates a high level of technical skill and organized training. Knowledge related to construction, irrigation, trade, and resource management was likely transmitted through apprenticeships and practical instruction, ensuring that urban centers could sustain agricultural surplus, craft production, and trade. The emphasis on precision and standardization reflects a society that valued technical expertise and systematic learning. In early China, education was closely tied to both administrative and ritual needs. Training in reading, writing, mathematics, and divination was provided to scribes, priests, and officials who managed agricultural resources, coordinated labor, and conducted ceremonies. Knowledge transmission emphasized accuracy, tradition, and continuity, ensuring that governance, religious practices, and agricultural management remained effective across generations. Education in these societies was both a practical tool and a mechanism for maintaining social hierarchies, cultural values, and political authority. Specialized education extended to crafts, metallurgy, and other technological fields. Apprentices learned techniques for smelting, tool making, pottery, and construction, ensuring that technical knowledge could be applied efficiently in support of agricultural and urban needs. Training in these practical domains allowed societies to maximize productivity, innovate in tool and infrastructure design, and sustain urban populations. The combination of technical, administrative, and religious education highlights the integrated nature of professional knowledge in early agricultural civilizations. Education also supported the development of mathematics, astronomy, and scientific observation. Accurate record keeping, measurement systems, and calendrical knowledge were essential for agriculture, trade, and governance. Scribes and scholars recorded crop yields, irrigation schedules, astronomical observations, and economic transactions, providing a foundation for informed decision-making. Education enabled communities to adapt to environmental changes, plan for seasonal variations, and improve agricultural efficiency, demonstrating the practical impact of literacy and specialized knowledge. Religious and cultural education reinforced social cohesion and political authority. Young scribes and priests were trained in ritual practices, mythological narratives, and moral instruction, ensuring the continuity of cultural identity and shared values. Ceremonial knowledge legitimized leadership, coordinated labor, and maintained social order, illustrating how education served both practical and symbolic functions. Literacy and ritual expertise reinforced hierarchies, enabling educated elites to guide and influence broader society. Trade and economic management also benefited from professional education. Merchants, administrators, and scribes relied on training in numeracy, measurement, and record-keeping to regulate commerce, plan production, and monitor the distribution of surplus goods. Specialized knowledge ensured efficiency, accuracy, and accountability in long-distance trade networks, supporting the growth of urban centers and interregional connections. Education contributed directly to economic stability, social organization, and technological innovation. In conclusion, the rise of formal education and professionalization of knowledge was a transformative development. During the agricultural revolution, by training scribes, artisans, administrators, and religious officials, early societies ensured the accurate transmission of technical, administrative, and cultural knowledge. Education reinforced social hierarchies, supported governance, facilitated economic management, and preserved cultural identity. The integration of literacy, numeracy, and specialized expertise contributed to the stability, complexity, and resilience of early agricultural civilizations. In the next episode, we will examine the emergence of urban centers and city life, exploring how agriculture, trade, governance, and education combined to create thriving early cities and complex social networks. The emergence of urban centers marked a defining stage in the agricultural revolution, reflecting the culmination of advancements in agriculture, trade, education, governance, and technology. As agricultural productivity increased, surplus food allowed for population growth, specialization of labor, and the concentration of communities into towns and cities. Urban centers became hubs of economic activity, political administration, religious practice, and cultural exchange. They facilitated complex social networks, coordinated large-scale projects, and supported diverse occupational groups, laying the foundation for civilization as we recognize it today. In Mesopotamia, cities such as Uruk, Ur, and Babylon illustrate the integration of agriculture, trade, and governance in urban development. Surplus grain from surrounding fields supported a growing population, allowing individuals to engage in specialized occupations, including artisans, merchants, scribes, and administrators. Urban centers developed structured layouts, public buildings, temples, marketplaces, and defensive walls, reflecting careful planning and social organization. Administrative records, stored on clay tablets, ensured the management of resources, labor, and trade, highlighting the critical role of literacy, education, and bureaucracy in urban life. Egyptian cities developed along the Nile, benefiting from the river's predictable flooding and fertile soils. Agricultural surplus supported centralized administration, monumental architecture, and religious institutions. Cities such as Memphis and Thebes became cultural, political, and religious centers, hosting administrative offices, granaries, workshops, and temples. Urban planning in Egypt reflected both practical needs, such as flood control and trade facilitation, and ceremonial considerations, including temples and tombs. Governance, education, and religious authority were tightly interwoven in urban life, reinforcing social cohesion and political stability. The Indus Valley Civilization provides a remarkable example of early urban planning. Cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro were laid out on grid patterns, featuring advanced drainage systems, standardized building dimensions, and designated public and private spaces. This level of urban organization indicates sophisticated knowledge of engineering, sanitation, and civic administration. Standardized weights and measures suggest centralized control over trade and resource distribution. Urban life was supported by agricultural surplus, trade networks, specialized labor, and coordinated governance, illustrating the interplay between technological, economic, and social factors. Urban centers facilitated the specialization of labor, allowing individuals to focus on specific crafts, professions, and administrative functions. Artisans produced pottery, textiles, metal tools, and jewelry. Scribes maintained records and managed bureaucratic systems. Merchants engaged in local and long-distance trade, and religious leaders conducted ceremonies and preserved cultural knowledge. Specialization increased efficiency, innovation, and productivity, contributing to the overall prosperity and sustainability of cities. Population concentration enabled collaboration on large-scale projects, such as irrigation systems, public buildings, and fortifications. Markets and trade centers were vital components of urban life. Surplus agricultural products, crafted goods, and imported materials were exchanged within cities and across regions. Urban marketplaces facilitated economic interaction, regulated prices, and supported the distribution of resources. Written records and standardized measures ensured transparency and consistency in trade, reducing disputes and enabling complex commercial networks. Trade promoted cultural exchange, technological dissemination, and social integration, reinforcing the central role of cities in regional and interregional connectivity. Governance and administration were essential to urban sustainability. Rulers, bureaucrats, and scribes coordinated resource allocation, labor organization, taxation, and legal systems. Temples and religious institutions often served dual functions, acting as centers of spiritual authority and administrative oversight. Urban governance required precise planning, record-keeping, and enforcement of laws, ensuring social order and efficient management of surplus and labor. Political authority was reinforced through monumental architecture, religious rituals, and symbolic displays of power, demonstrating the intertwined nature of governance, culture, and urban infrastructure. Religion and ritual remained integral to city life, legitimizing authority and promoting social cohesion. Temples and ceremonial centers hosted festivals, religious observances, and administrative activities, intertwining spiritual, political, and economic functions. Religious leaders influenced agricultural practices, labor organization, and resource management, reinforcing the connection between spiritual and practical concerns. Ceremonial practices fostered community identity, coordinated collective work, and maintained hierarchical structures within urban societies. Education and professional training were central to urban functionality. Scribes, artisans, and administrators required instruction in literacy, numeracy, technical skills, and religious practice. Urban centers supported formalized training programs, apprenticeships, and knowledge transmission, ensuring the continuity of administrative, technological, and cultural expertise. Literacy facilitated record-keeping, economic management, and legal codification, while technical and artistic skills supported construction, craft production, and infrastructure development. Education reinforced specialization and contributed to the complexity and resilience of urban society. Urban life also stimulated intellectual, artistic, and cultural development. Cities served as centers for literature, scientific observation, technological innovation, and artistic expression. Public spaces, workshops, and administrative buildings enabled collaboration and knowledge dissemination, supporting cumulative cultural progress. Literature, written records, religious texts, and monumental inscriptions preserved historical memory, codified societal norms, and reinforced shared values. Urban environments fostered cultural continuity and innovation, demonstrating the dynamic interplay between social complexity and intellectual development. In conclusion, the emergence of urban centers during the agricultural revolution represented the integration of agriculture, trade, governance, education, and religion into concentrated, organized communities. Cities facilitated specialization of labor, coordination of large-scale projects, economic exchange, cultural transmission, and political authority. Urban life allowed early civilizations to sustain population growth, manage resources efficiently, and foster innovation and cultural identity. In the next episode, we will explore the environmental and ecological impact of agricultural intensification and urbanization, examining how human activity transformed landscapes, ecosystems, and resource management strategies during the Neolithic and early urban periods. The environmental and ecological impact of agricultural intensification and urbanization was profound, reshaping landscapes, ecosystems, and resource management strategies. As human populations grew and agriculture became more intensive, forests were cleared, wetlands drained, and soils cultivated extensively. Early farmers developed techniques to enhance productivity, including irrigation, crop rotation, terracing, and selective breeding. While these innovations increased food supply and supported urban growth, they also introduced new environmental challenges, such as soil depletion, erosion, deforestation, and changes in local hydrology, requiring early societies to develop strategies for sustainable resource use. In Mesopotamia, the development of irrigation systems transformed arid and semi-arid landscapes into productive agricultural zones. Canals, levees, and reservoirs allowed for controlled water distribution, supporting multiple harvests per year and increasing food surplus. However, intensive irrigation led to soil salinization, reducing fertility over time and necessitating careful management and periodic fallow periods. Communities developed knowledge of seasonal water cycles, soil conditions, and canal maintenance to sustain productivity, demonstrating early adaptive strategies for environmental challenges. Egyptian agriculture relied heavily on the predictable flooding of the Nile River, which deposited nutrient-rich silt on agricultural fields. Farmers developed basin irrigation techniques, creating networks of channels, dikes, and reservoirs to maximize the benefits of annual floods, while the Nile's regular inundation minimized some environmental risks. The expansion of cultivated land and population growth required careful coordination to prevent overuse and ensure equitable distribution of water resources. The integration of environmental knowledge into agricultural practice illustrates the sophisticated ecological management strategies of early civilizations. The Indus Valley Civilization demonstrates an advanced understanding of urban water management and environmental planning. Cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa featured sophisticated drainage systems, wells, and reservoirs, reflecting attention to sanitation, water conservation, and flood mitigation. Agricultural fields were carefully planned to balance soil fertility and crop rotation, while urban centers were designed to accommodate population growth without compromising resource Availability. The Indus Valley exemplifies the integration of ecological knowledge with urban planning and agricultural productivity, highlighting the capacity of early societies to manage environmental constraints. In early China, river valleys such as the Yellow River and Yangtze River were central to agricultural intensification. Irrigation, levee construction, and flood control projects enabled higher yields and population growth. Early Chinese farmers practiced crop rotation, soil amendment, and selective breeding to maintain fertility and productivity. Environmental challenges, including flooding, erosion, and resource depletion, required coordinated management, illustrating the interconnectedness of ecological knowledge, agricultural practices, and social organization. Deforestation and landscape modification were common consequences of agricultural expansion. Wood was used for construction, fuel, and tool making, leading to the reduction of natural forests in many regions. Forest clearance provided land for cultivation, but it also affected soil quality, water availability, and local biodiversity. Early societies developed techniques to mitigate these impacts, such as creating terraces, preserving forested areas near settlements, and managing grazing practices. These adaptations reflect an early awareness of the ecological consequences of human activity. Soil management was a critical component of sustainable agriculture. Techniques such as crop rotation, fallowing, composting, and the use of manures help maintain fertility and prevent depletion. Terracing on hillsides reduced erosion, while irrigation canals minimized water loss and soil degradation. Knowledge of soil types, nutrient cycles, and seasonal patterns allowed farmers to optimize productivity while minimizing environmental risks. This empirical understanding of ecology and soil management was essential for the long-term success of agricultural societies. Early societies also interacted with animal populations to support agriculture and urban life. Domesticated animals provided labor, food, and materials, while grazing practices needed to be managed to prevent overgrazing and soil degradation. Herding strategies, selective breeding, and pasture rotation were developed to sustain animal populations and maintain ecosystem balance. These practices highlight the interdependence between human communities, agricultural production, and animal management in shaping environmental outcomes. Trade and urbanization further influenced ecological systems. The demand for resources, such as metals, timber, and construction materials, prompted the extraction and transport of natural resources over long distances. Urban centers concentrated populations and resource use, generating waste and requiring innovative solutions for sanitation and resource distribution. Early civilizations demonstrated awareness of these challenges, implementing waste management, water drainage, and storage solutions to maintain health and productivity. In conclusion, the environmental and ecological impact of agricultural intensification and urbanization during the Neolithic and early urban periods was significant, requiring adaptive strategies for sustainable resource use. Irrigation, soil management, deforestation mitigation, urban planning, and animal husbandry illustrate the sophisticated ecological knowledge developed by early societies. Understanding and managing environmental challenges enabled agricultural surplus, population growth, and urban development, laying the foundation for subsequent technological, social, and cultural advancements. In the next episode, we will examine the social hierarchies and gender roles in early agricultural societies, exploring how labor division, social stratification, and family structures shape daily life, governance, and cultural norms. Social hierarchies and gender roles in early agricultural societies played a central role in shaping daily life. labor division, governance, and cultural norms. The transition from small, egalitarian hunter-gatherer bands to large, sedentary agricultural communities created new social complexities. Surplus food allowed for the emergence of specialized labor, which in turn contributed to economic differentiation, political authority, and social stratification. Social hierarchies were often based on wealth, occupation, religious authority, and lineage, while gender roles were shaped by both biological considerations and cultural expectations. These structures influenced decision-making, resource allocation, and the organization of labor across agricultural, domestic, and civic activities. In Mesopotamia, social hierarchies were strongly influenced by the management of agricultural surplus and the control of trade networks. Elites, including rulers, priests, and wealthy landowners, held authority over land, labor, and resources. They regulated irrigation systems, collected taxes, and administered legal codes, such as the Code of Hammurabi. Artisans, merchants, and laborers performed specialized tasks but had limited political influence. Peasants and agricultural workers provided the foundation of food production, sustaining the population and supporting the elite classes. This hierarchical organization allowed for coordinated large-scale agricultural projects and urban development, but also created social inequalities and rigid class structures. Gender roles were a critical aspect of social organization in early agricultural societies. Women typically played central roles in food preparation, childcare, textile production, and domestic management, while men often engaged in plowing, construction, trade, and defense. However, these roles were not uniform across regions and could be influenced by social class, local customs, and economic needs. In some societies, women participated in religious rituals, craft production, and trade, demonstrating flexibility within the prescribed gender divisions. Gendered labor division was closely tied to biological, social, and environmental considerations, ensuring that communities could efficiently utilize available human resources. In Egypt, social hierarchies were reinforced by religious ideology, with the pharaoh considered a divine ruler responsible for maintaining cosmic order. Priests, scribes, and officials held positions of authority, overseeing agricultural management, surplus distribution, and religious ceremonies. Farmers, artisans, and laborers formed the working classes, contributing to food production, craft specialization, and urban infrastructure. Women in Egypt engaged in domestic work, weaving, and food processing, but could also own property, inherit land, and participate in religious activities, reflecting a nuanced approach to gender roles. Social and gender hierarchies were intertwined with religious beliefs, economic structures, and political authority. The Indus Valley Civilization demonstrates evidence of social stratification through urban planning, standardized architecture, and specialized labor. Large public buildings, granaries, and administrative complexes suggest centralized authority and management of resources. Artisans, traders, and laborers contributed to economic and civic life, while evidence regarding gender roles is more limited. However, figurines, artifacts, and burial practices indicate that both men and women participated in religious, domestic, and economic activities, highlighting the complex interplay between social status, occupation, and gender within urban settings. Early Chinese societies exhibited hierarchical structures shaped by kinship, political authority, and control of agricultural resources. Nobles, priests, and officials held privileged positions, managing land, labor, and religious rituals. Peasants and laborers performed essential agricultural work, sustaining population growth and economic stability. Women's roles varied, including domestic responsibilities, textile production, food processing, and ritual participation. Elite women occasionally held significant influence within the royal court or religious institutions, demonstrating variability in gendered authority. Hierarchies and gender roles facilitated the organization of labor, the management of surplus, and the stability of early civilizations. Religious and ceremonial practices reinforced social hierarchies and gender norms. Rituals, festivals, and offerings often reflected status distinctions and gendered participation, with priests and elite individuals leading public ceremonies. Religious ideology legitimized political authority, codified moral and social expectations, and coordinated collective labor. The integration of spiritual authority with social stratification ensured compliance with societal norms, contributing to cohesion and the maintenance of urban and agricultural systems. Economic specialization further shaped social and gender roles. Artisans, traders, scribes, and administrators acquired prestige and influence through their expertise, while laborers and peasants formed the foundation of agricultural productivity. Women's involvement in domestic, craft, and food-related labor complemented male-dominated tasks such as plowing, construction, and defense. Interdependence between different labor groups reinforced community functioning and resource distribution. Over time, specialization facilitated technological innovation, economic diversification, and urban development, but also deepened social stratification. Education and knowledge transmission were closely tied to social hierarchies. Scribes, priests, and skilled artisans received specialized training, ensuring the continuity of administrative, technical, and cultural expertise. Literacy and numeracy were concentrated within elite classes, reinforcing their authority and influence. Apprenticeships, formal instruction, and familial transmission of skills allowed new generations to acquire expertise, supporting the functioning and stability of agricultural and urban societies. In conclusion, social hierarchies and gender roles were central to early agricultural societies, shaping labor division, governance, cultural norms, and resource management. Hierarchical structures facilitated coordination, specialization, and the efficient organization of communities, while gender roles optimized labor allocation and reproductive responsibilities. These social systems supported agricultural productivity, urban growth, and technological innovation, but also created inequalities and reinforced status distinctions. In the next episode, we will explore the technological innovations and scientific knowledge that emerged during the agricultural revolution, examining how tools, metallurgy, measurement systems, and empirical observation advanced productivity, efficiency, and societal development. Technological innovations and scientific knowledge were fundamental drivers of productivity, efficiency, and societal development during the agricultural revolution. Early agricultural societies relied on increasingly sophisticated tools, techniques, and empirical understanding to maximize food production, manage resources, and sustain urban centers. Technological progress encompassed advancements in farming implements, irrigation systems, metallurgy, measurement systems, and construction methods. Scientific observation of natural cycles, soil conditions, and crop performance informed practical decision-making, laying the foundation for systematic knowledge and long-term agricultural sustainability. In Mesopotamia, technological innovations transformed agricultural productivity and urban life. The plow, often pulled by oxen, increased the efficiency of land cultivation and allowed for the expansion of arable fields. Irrigation systems, including canals, levees, and reservoirs, enabled controlled water distribution, multiple harvests, and protection against seasonal variability. Metallurgical advancements, such as the production of bronze tools and weapons, enhanced both agricultural and defensive capabilities. Early Mesopotamians also developed numerical and measurement systems for land surveying, accounting, and trade, reflecting the integration of technology, mathematics, and practical application. Egyptian innovations similarly supported agricultural efficiency and societal complexity. The basin irrigation system maximized the benefits of the Nile's predictable floods, ensuring fertile soil and reliable crop yields. Tools made from copper and later bronze improved plowing, harvesting, and construction, while architectural techniques allowed for monumental buildings, storage facilities, and urban infrastructure. Egyptians monitored celestial cycles to predict flooding and coordinate planting schedules, demonstrating the integration of empirical observation with agricultural management. Scientific knowledge and technological expertise were closely tied to religious and political institutions, reinforcing governance and urban organization. The Indus Valley Civilization exhibited advanced urban planning, engineering, and craft production. Cities such as Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa featured standardized bricks, sophisticated drainage systems, water reservoirs, and public buildings. Precision in measurement, uniformity in construction, and coordinated labor reflect empirical knowledge, technical skill, and social organization. Artisans and metallurgists produced tools, ornaments, and ceramics using copper, bronze, and other materials, supporting both daily life and trade networks. Technological sophistication contributed to the efficiency, health, and resilience of urban centers, demonstrating the interconnection of science, craft, and governance. In early China, technological and scientific knowledge was applied to agriculture, water management, and urban development. Irrigation canals, levees, and terraced fields optimized land use, while plowing, crop rotation, and selective breeding enhanced yields. Astronomical observations guided planting cycles, flood control, and ceremonial calendars. Metallurgical advancements in bronze and later iron improved agricultural tools, weaponry, and infrastructure. Knowledge transmission through formal education, apprenticeship, and scribal record-keeping ensured the continuity and refinement of these innovations, reinforcing social hierarchies and supporting population growth. Measurement systems and record-keeping were essential components of technological advancement. Standardized units for length, weight, and volume facilitated trade, construction, and resource allocation. Numerical systems enabled accurate accounting of agricultural surplus, labor organization, and taxation. Calendrical systems and astronomical observations informed agricultural schedules, religious rituals, and civic planning. The systematic application of empirical knowledge exemplifies how early societies combined observation, experimentation, and practical reasoning to manage increasingly complex communities. Metallurgy played a critical role in technological innovation. The transition from stone to copper, bronze, and eventually iron tools allowed for more efficient plowing, harvesting, construction, and defense. Metal tools and weapons enhanced productivity, facilitated long-distance trade, and supported urban growth. Knowledge of ore extraction, smelting, alloy production, and tool fabrication represented a significant accumulation of technical expertise, transmitted through apprenticeships and specialized craft networks. Metallurgical advancements directly influenced economic military, and agricultural capabilities. Water management technologies were central to sustaining agricultural and urban systems. Canals, reservoirs, wells, and drainage systems regulated water supply, prevented flooding, and maintained soil fertility. Coordinated maintenance of infrastructure required organized labor, governance, and technical knowledge. Communities monitored seasonal patterns, rainfall, and river flows to optimize irrigation and mitigate environmental risks. Early understanding of hydrology and engineering demonstrates the capacity of agricultural societies to adapt to ecological challenges and support population growth. The integration of technological and scientific knowledge extended to construction, urban planning, and craft production. Standardized bricks, buildings, roads, and public spaces facilitated organization, sanitation, and defense. Craft specialization in pottery, textiles, and metallurgy enhanced economic diversity and supported trade networks. Empirical observation, experimentation, and knowledge transmission allowed early societies to refine techniques, innovate, and sustain complex urban centers over time. In conclusion, technological innovations and scientific knowledge were vital to the success of the agricultural revolution. Advancements in tools, metallurgy, irrigation, measurement systems, and empirical observation enhanced agricultural productivity, urban organization, trade, and governance. These innovations enabled societies to manage resources efficiently, adapt to environmental challenges, and sustain population growth. The agricultural revolution laid the groundwork for subsequent technological, cultural, and social developments, establishing the foundations of civilization and human progress.